You come seeking adventure and salty old pirates, eh? Salty old pirates, this be the place.
Dead men tell no tales.
Don't tell him, Carlos. Don't be chicken.
I am not chicken. I will not talk.
That's a good lad. Come on now.
Don't scare him.
We want the red.
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, my friend. Happy anniversary. I'll explain that later. And welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your Walt Disney World information station. I am your host, Lou Mongello, and this is show number 474, and I'm here once again to not only help you have the best possible vacation experience when you come to the parks, but I also want to help bring you a little bit of Disney magic with this podcast, videos, live broadcasts on Facebook every Wednesday night, my books, new book, I'll get to that later, audio tours, and more. You can find everything over at the brand new, recently relaunched 10th anniversary edition of WDWRadio.com. So long before Johnny Depp helped bring Pirates of the Caribbean to life on the big screen, the attraction has been one that has delighted guests going back to Disneyland in 1967. And while every great Disney attraction is rooted in story, sometimes, as in the case of Pirates, the stories behind the scenes and how it came to be are as fascinating, intriguing, and filled with secrets you probably never knew. So this week, I invite you to sit closer together and keep your ruddy hands on board, because that's going to be the best way to not only repel borders, but to find out some secrets and stories you never knew about Pirates of the Caribbean. Mark well my words, matey.
Dead men tell no tales.
I'll then have the answer to our last Walt Disney World trivia question of the week and pose a new challenge for your chance to win a Disney prize package. Then stay tuned to the end of the show. I'll have more information about not just upcoming meets of the month for February, but some special events, announcements, my new book, the new site, some other things coming down the pike, and more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show.
Here's to the future. Here's to the future. Here's to the future. Here's to the future and you. It's a world full of colors, a perfect harmony.
Before we get into this week's show, I want to start off by saying thank you. Again, because of you, this week we are actually celebrating the 10-year anniversary of WDW Radio. I have been completely overwhelmed and humbled by your messages and posts and photos. So thank you for that. I of course, have to thank the entire WDW Radio blog and editorial team. I could not do any of this without them and the sharing of their time and their talent and their photos and their stories and their passion for Disney. If you haven't checked out the blog, please go and do it. And while you're there, you're going to notice as part of the kickoff celebration, you can also check out the brand new, recently relaunched new WDW Radio site. It is completely redesigned and built from the ground up. It is more streamlined, it's faster, it's even easier to navigate, lots of new features as well. When you're there, I also have a present for you. I have a brand new book, which is free for you. You can find it on the homepage of WDW Radio. It is 102, obviously, things that you need to do at Walt Disney World at least once. It's a mini book / checklist. All you need to do is subscribe to our newsletter. If you already do, don't worry, I will send you a link to download it. Also, if you haven't liked the WDW Radio page over on Facebook, please go and do so. Facebook.com/WDW Radio, and help spread the word. Invite your friends. Working on some new things that are going to be released exclusively on and at Facebook. And of course, I want you to be part of the celebration. So this Wednesday, during the WDW Radio Live video broadcast and show at 7:30 p.m. Eastern over on Facebook.com/WDW. It is going to be a completely call-in show. I want you to call in and share your favorite episode, your favorite interview, your favorite event, memory, story, how we met, how the show has impacted you or your vacation, whatever it might be. It's really going to be a show that is driven by and because of and with you. Again, that's 7:30 p.m. Eastern over at Facebook.com/WDW Radio. There are many more plans in the works as we celebrate the decade-long anniversary of the show together. And all I ask while you're waiting is please help spread the word, invite your friends to be part of it. And once again, thank you, thank you, thank you. I would obviously not be here without you. We'll talk more about the anniversary and some of the upcoming plans on Wednesday night. But for now, on with the show.
Ye come seeking adventure and salty old pirates, eh? Sure you've come to the proper place. But keep a weather eye open, mates, and hold on tight, with both hands if you please. There be squalls ahead, and Davy Jones waiting for them what don't obey.
Don't tell him, Carlos. Don't be cheeking.
We all know that the Disney movies and the attractions in the parks are based on story. It's the story of the princess, the mysterious legend of the Yeti, the little boy who wouldn't grow up, and the list obviously goes on and on and on. But I think for some attractions, the story of the attraction itself is interesting and sometimes circuitous and detailed, and as compelling as the fables that maybe they were based on. You know, like the genesis of the original Haunted Mansion in Disneyland, for example, is one such attraction, and another is Pirates of the Caribbean. And long before the audio animatronic Johnny Depp poked his head out from the inside of a barrel, the stories and the details and the hidden secrets of Pirates of the Caribbean attraction add another wonderful, rich layer to this classic theme park experience, which not only, spawned a wildly successful franchise of movies, but I think a renewed interest in the genre and the real stories of pirates. So this week, we're going to look at Pirates of the Caribbean, not necessarily discussing what you can see, but maybe some of the things that you haven't before, as we explore 10-ish secrets of Pirates of the Caribbean. And joining me this week is a man who, like the attraction itself, is not just a legend, but is swirled in history and mystery and intrigue. He is an author, raconteur, and as much a character as Davy Jones himself. He is not Captain Kangaroo, but instead he is Captain Jimmy Corcus.
Arr, arr, yay, yay. Alas, ye swabs, Fair warning, have ye spoilers ahead.
There are going to be spoilers ahead. There's lots of good spoilers ahead.
Lou, always a joy to see you, and it's always a pleasure to be your first mate, even though your real first mate is a super cutie. It's great on a podcast to be your first mate as we sail these dangerous seas ahead of us, and I was just thinking lately, that the concept of theme park, if theme is a story and park is a place, then a theme park is a place of stories. And, of course, that's one of the things that makes a Disney experience so different, from other amusement venues. But in terms of consistently immersing people into a different world, a different environment, when Disney does it right, nobody can do it better.
I agree with you, and that's not why we go. It's why we go back and why we continue to go back. And look, one of the things, and I think this is why we are such kindred spirits, what we like to do, Jim, is help people peel back, as I like to call it, the layers of the onion, the layers of the cake, whatever you like to call it, because there is, the more you dig a little deeper, to quote Mama Odie, the more you dig a little deeper, the more you find out. And I think what happens is, it doesn't spoil the experience, but it enhances you. The more you know, the more informed you are, the more you understand how things work and why they're there, and the complete story that's being told using all five senses in 360 degrees.
I completely agree that knowing how things were done, why certain choices were made, brings an added appreciation, because again, Disney does it so seamlessly that sometimes you don't pay attention. You realize how that is happening. But again, I'm serious for those who are listening. There probably will be some spoilers, and there are people who, and I'm fine with that, who don't want to know how a magic trick is done. You know, I don't want to know what they do to my food in the kitchen, as long as when it comes out on my plate, this is really appealing. So I understand that concept, but I have found that the more I look into it, the more I study, the more I see even some of the things that weren't chosen, really helps me to go, wow, how did they do that? You know? I talked with Alice Davis one time, and she said, none of us knew what we were doing because it had never been done before. And that's certainly true of the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, which opened in 1967. So this year we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Disneyland attraction. And I'm sure you get asked an awful lot, Luke, because I always get asked, well, what is your favorite Disney attraction, Disney theme park? And I think people are expecting me to say, one of the roller coasters, or because of my great love of films like Peter Pan, to say Peter Pan. But I find myself always using Pirates of the Caribbean as my favorite attraction, even though it's 50 years old. I think it is an iconic Disney theme park attraction. Certainly, the story of Pirates has been told differently in each of the Disney theme parks. At Shanghai, one of these days, I'd love to see that version, which is more themed to the film franchise. But my gosh, Pirates of the Caribbean is one of those attractions that everybody can ride, no matter your height or your age or your weight or whatever, and it's constantly appealing. Each time you go through, you're seeing something. You're not in an omnimover, like a doom buggy or whatever, and because those curve around so that it blocks your sight and also helps the sound, in that area. But in Pirates, you can look anywhere. You can look to the one side, you can look to the other side, you can look to the front, you can look up above, you can look behind you, whatever. And even though it's the same basic story, it's a different experience.
Well, and I think to your point, excuse me, when you talk about people's favorite attractions, excuse me, I agree with you. I go back, to the Haunted Mansion. I go back to Pirates, and I think a lot of people, even before the movies came out, right? Obviously, the fifth movie in the series is now coming out as a whole new generation of Pirates fans. But I think even before that, it always had those things. Look, Marty Sklar said, it's the quintessential, it is the signature attraction. We measure everything we do against Pirates of the Caribbean, right? John Hench talks about.
I would certainly agree with Marty. I'd certainly agree with you.
You better agree with Marty.
I think that's still true today. And there you go, Marty. You got the Jim Corkis seal of approval there. But yes, and again, I think because it was such a entertaining attraction that it became so successful as a film franchise. And I think the film franchise tapped into things that people weren't always consciously aware. Somebody was saying, well, the Pirates of the Caribbean isn't supernatural, and the films, really. And I said, no, Pirates is completely supernatural. Yeah. Several years ago, I talked with Tony Baxter. I talked with Bob Rogers of BRC, who does all those, who was a former Imagineer and does all those entertainment things, and to a couple of other Imagineers. And they said, well, Jim, the story of pirates. And I said, oh, yeah, these pirates of the Caribbean, they're sacking the town and they set it on fire and they pay for their greed by, becoming skeletons, and they said, no. The story of Pirates of the Caribbean, here's one of our first secrets. Mm-hmm. The story is you're in a dead pirate's dream. You're in a dead pirate's dream. You're in a dream. You're moving slowly. You're drifting after that waterfall. You see the skeletons. The skeletons are all standing still. And then as you move, now there's some movement, but the movement can sort of be explained by, well, maybe it's the wind, maybe it's a trick of the light or whatever. And then you go through this long, dark tunnel, and bing, you're out in the bombardment area, and my gosh, they're alive, and all of this is going on, and all of this is going on at once. And then at the end of the Disneyland ride, you're in the arsenal, and the pirates blow themselves up. And so basically what has happened is, as you were going through those skeletons, what you were doing, and I'm sure you have listeners who know more about ghosts than I do, you were getting in commune with a dead pirate who was reliving the very last moments of his life. And with some ghosts, they're not there to interact with the living. What they're doing is they're constantly repeating the same loop of a certain section of time. And so whether this was Walt's, I know it wasn't Walt's conscious decision, but if it was, a subconscious decision of basically you're reliving, and that's why you can go back on the attraction over and over again, and it's not like, oh yeah, I see this, I know how this is happening, is you're reliving the last few moments of a dead pirate's life as you go through that, and you're floating just as you float through a dream. And then, and I love this at Disneyland, you're chugging back up the waterfall, and that pulls you out of the dream, just as going down the waterfall took you in. Now, Mark Davis never cared for chugging back up the waterfall. So when he was able to make a decision out in Florida, basically you see the last scene, and then it's step out of the boat to the left and go up the, and to me it's anticlimactic, but I don't know whether that's just because I grew up with the Disneyland attraction and loved that, and loved, of course, the Blue Bayou.
So this is interesting, Jim, because I had actually understood it and maybe read into it or was a little bit differently. I had understood.
As how have you seen it, or how have you been told?
So my understanding was that as you go through the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, you're traveling through time. And so as you begin the attraction, you are in the present. That's why you see the skeletons on the beach. You see my actual favorite scene is when you see the pirate, the skeleton of the pirate sort of at the helm in the hurricane scene. But when you go down the waterfall, you're traveling back in time. So that's why every skeleton you see before that, every pirate you see before that is a skeleton, right? The ones in the beach, the ones in the jail, they're all skeletons. As soon as you go down that, you're traveling back in time. You're actually you're reliving and you're going through that section of time. And then when you go up the moving walkway, and again, there was, Mark Davis wanted some other different things when you came up, but you're actually traveling through time again to the present. So when you do exit out into the gift shop, the things that you see in there, the props that you see on the walls, they're antiques because they came from an earlier time. Those are antiques of the time period that you had just passed through.
See, and I think this is one of the reasons why people love pirates is that there's so many interpretations that you can put into this, It's not like you go on the Snow White ride or the Alice in Wonderland ride or the Pinocchio ride or whatever, and you have a different story to tell or a different interpretation of why those story elements are there. And again, the reason why you see skeletons in the beginning is because, of course, as you know, originally it was going to be a walk-through attraction, and so Walt had already put in steel and concrete and all that, and then when he came back from the New York World's Fair, he said, hey, I saw how neatly those small whirl boats worked, and my gosh, there's not going to be enough space underneath New Orleans Square. We're going to need to go underneath the berm, underneath the train to the big show building on the other side. And they said, but Walt, we dug all of this. He said, yeah, we're going to pull out the steel and all of this, very expensive decision. They said, but we've still got this hole in the ground. And he says, oh, put some caves in there, put some skeletons in there. And so Mark Davis hated it because he felt, you're going chronologically, and so you should see the skeletons at the end. You should see the consequences of what they're doing. The consequences of forcing themselves on these women and all of this. And then of course when they made the changes in '97, so pirates weren't chasing women, they were chasing food. One of the reasons for that is because just like lust, gluttony is one of the 7 sins, and greed is one of the 7 sins. So at Disneyland, where you see those guys, pulling this chest and they'll never be able to make it up, now you're paying the consequences for that. Now you're a skeleton. See how stupid you were that you were spending all your time on this because you can't take it with you when you go. And again, I bring up Mark Davis, but I think one of the things that a lot of times people forget too is these Imagineers, and you've met a lot of them. They're human beings, and they have their own ideas and they have their own agendas, and just because they're an Imagineer and an Imagineer that you respect and may have been actually involved with the attraction doesn't always mean they were right. I remember talking to Mark and saying, I just love the background work done by Claude Coates. And Claude Coates is very famous as an Imagineer to tell the story with the backgrounds. He came from animation backgrounds and all this. Rather than with character, do it with backgrounds. And so when Walt combined Mark, who was strong with characters, with Claude, who was strong with backgrounds, you've got an absolute hit. But then Mark was going, well, I suggested some of those backgrounds. All of them were always fighting for the recognition, whereas just like in animation, Imagineering is a collaborative art. You work with all of that, and even though Mark drew those sketches of the pirates and the poses, and thank heavens, that concept art exists, some of those faces actually came from sculptor Blaine Gibson. I was talking with Blaine Gibson, and I said, well, so all of those pirate faces, those were from Mark. And he says, no, some of them from Mark. He says, but, on Sundays, my wife would drag me to church, and I was going, I've got these things to do. I've got to do work, and I hated being in. So what I would do is I would sketch some of the people sitting in the pews. He said, so some of those pirate faces, he figured you see, were people who were attending church on Sunday. And he said, of course, some of these we had to exaggerate. And here's something, and maybe one of your listeners can do this. Here's another secret. The auctioneer, one of the most elaborate audio animatronic figures ever made, even to this time. Most pirate figures had maybe 3 or 4 movements, on the average maybe about 7 or 8. The auctioneer, 27. And I said, so the auctioneer is based, and he says, well, Mark came up with an auctioneer. He says, but I used one of my friends in Imagineering for the face. I said, okay, well, who? He says, no, I can't say it. It wouldn't be right. Please tell me, And as I was preparing for this podcast, I started to look through, some of the photos that I have, and there were 2 of them of Alice Davis costuming the auctioneer, and I'm taking a look at the face without the beard, without the hat, all of that. Looks an awful lot like a very young Rolly Crump. So those of you who are listening, you go back. You could probably find those pictures too. I think one is printed in the Jason Sorrell book, which is an excellent book to have in your library there. And or maybe we should ask Rolly. Rolly's still alive, or maybe he doesn't even know. But the auctioneer was so precise that his latex lip could be, or latex skin could be hooked individually to the lip, so the lip could actually form vowels, and Disney doesn't do that anymore because it wears out the skin too fast. It's a maintenance issue, and they figure you're only going through here, a couple of seconds. You're not going to see that. Mark told me, he said, I apologize to Walt. I said, no, it's too complicated. We could have done like a Charlie McCarthy thing, and that would have been fine. And he says, and Walt goes, no, it's great. It's great. It gives something extra. It's something more. And that was the Walt philosophy. Well, tell me something about pirates I don't know.
Well, obviously, I can't tell you anything you don't know, but I do. And because you mentioned Walt,
or you may have a different perspective here.
Well, I want to go back to Walt because I want to talk about the very early incarnations, because that was one of the things that had always fascinated, right? And much like the mansion, it went through a lot of different machinations, but it really does, it did, like so many things, start with Walt. And Mark Davis tells a story that, one day Walt comes to him, he's like, I want to do an attraction on pirates and, maybe Pirates of the Caribbean. And in one sentence, in a matter of seconds, he came up with the idea for the attraction and the name. But originally, and I know you know this, it was going to be that walk through wax museum, through that basement where you could really, originally they wanted to sort of go through a lot of different villains from history, and then eventually they narrowed the focus to pirates, and you were going to have this star figure telling a story.
Right,
and
a rogues gallery. Yeah,
but all these
Captain Kidd, Captain Morgan, yeah.
Right, you're going to go through these different vignettes in the background, and eventually in the early 60s, Mark Davis did more drawings of a much more detailed museum talking about the dark side of Delta City, which sounds like a song or a Star Wars movie installment. But you're right, Blackbeard and Captain Morgan, the pirate, not the liquor, were going to be in this museum. And Mark Davis, obviously, his signature is all over it. The characters became more animated, more almost cartoonish than the historical, more serious, because at one point, if you think about it, Jim, New Orleans Square and that whole area was going to be a relatively dark place with this Pirates of the Caribbean attraction and the Haunted Mansion type attraction. But the idea of it being this walkthrough it was really intriguing to me. Like I almost would have, I mean, there was a lot of issues that I think it would have had, but you would have gone through all these different tableaus, like a tavern and a town square, the seaport, a lot of these things that we see in the current the current iteration, the beachfront.
Yeah, a seaport on fire. Yes.
Right. All those things were there originally and were brought over.
Well, actually, Walt, of course, as a kid, there was a little island over in that he as a kid, and he and his friends would go over and they'd play pirates. And Walt's first idea of a pirate's place was even as early as 1954, before Disneyland was even built, because he wanted that section where at Disneyland where Frontierland and Adventureland connect. It was more of a Magnolia Park type area. He wanted that at New Orleans area. In fact, on that opening day show with Bob Cummings, he says, down on New Orleans Street over there is Dixieland Jazz, and so you had the chicken plantation and Aunt Jemima's Pancake House were all done in the style of New Orleans with the wrought iron railings and all of that. And he had Herb Ryman do up a sketch where it would progress, and then, yes, you had New Orleans, and then a little further down towards the edge of New Orleans, that's where you had the pirate section. You had Bluebeard's den, and you would have a Pirate's Mart, which was a shopping area and all that. And from there, he had Sam McKim come in and do more of a detail. And the walkthrough was going to be underneath New Orleans Square. So there would be plenty of room. And in 61, you're right. You're exactly right. That's when Walt came, and he came up with the name of Pirates of the Caribbean. Walt would do that all the time. People Mover. People don't realize that Walt came up with that name, People Mover, and was just supposed to be a placeholder. He figured somebody would come up with a better name for it. But what it did is it moved people, so it's a People Mover. That People Mover thing, that's what we're going to do. But the same thing with Pirates of the Caribbean. But, yeah, underneath there, starting in 61, Davis primarily was doing the walkthrough, and you would go underneath. And so you're going down, so it's this whole underground. So it's going to be spooky, and there's different rooms, and there was going to be a tour guide, and it would be about 50 to 70 people. And you would start in the harbor. So you'd be walking through the harbor, and on your left-hand side would be a tavern. And so you'd be looking in the tavern, and you'd see these tableaus, or there'd be a window or whatever, and then it curves around, and there's actually a full-size ship. And you go on a gangplank onto the full-size ship, and there's sort of a curly-Q path that you take, and then you go off a ramp on the other side, and you're going into a town square, and there's a fountain and all that. And one of the last tableaus you see is the seaport in flames. Now, he had Mark do this because Mark was great in terms of posing characters, because, again, since they're stationary, you don't want them, the typical wax figures with their hands standing at the side and all that. You want them, just like in animation, in some extreme action, pulled back or curved over a table or something like that. So, immediately you can sense what this is, and there'd be dramatic lighting. I saw Mark's concept sketch of Henry Morgan, and he was up on these steps, but the light was coming from underneath. And just like at Halloween, as everybody knows, when you hold a flashlight underneath your face, the shadows go in the wrong directions. Instead of the shadow for the nose going underneath, it goes over the top. So there's a frightening, unreal type atmosphere. And Mark went through 3 different versions of this before the World's Fair. And at one point, they were going to have a pirate towards the side of each of the tableaus that would be explaining some of this. But again, remember, this is early 60s, so this is before, audio animatronics, which come with, 63 with the Tiki Room, and then you don't have the human figures until Lincoln in 64. So these were what were, basically called electromechanical. So you have electricity working a mechanical thing that, has limited movement. So, for instance, the hippos in the Jungle Cruise were electromechanical, so they could go forward or back. They could go up or down. They could open the mouth or close the mouth, and that's all they could do, a handle. So you would have a pirate, and maybe he was sitting on a chair that was turned backwards, whatever, and he was over at the side, and he would give a little bit of a spiel. So it's very similar to what Walt had in mind for Edison Square, the harnessing the electricity show that evolved later into Carousel of Progress. And Mark said that, he was doing all these great sketches, and he said, but I was also running into trouble. I was doing these real pirates, and he says, the more I started researching these real pirates, they were pretty dull.
Right.
It
very non-Disney-like.
Like
very non-Disney-like pirates.
And very non-Disney-like. And he says, and many of them died after contracting diseases in bawdy houses, in the so it should have been bawdy houses in the Caribbean if you really wanted to have the pirates there. But so he says, well, but when Walt came back from the fair, he was so excited at how people had responded to Lincoln as a real figure, and also, the boats in terms of moving a large number of people, not just a group of 50 or 70 people. You could do that with the first two boats, going through.
But that addresses. That addresses a problem that all these attractions that originally start out as this idea of a walkthrough or a museum, right? Mansion went through a lot of incarnations where it was like that too. The reason why we've never seen it is because the problems that plagued the idea in the 60s are still today, right? So if you let people go through on their own, how do you gather those people? How do you get them to walk through at the same speed so you've got that good operational efficiency of the attraction? If you have somebody,
how do you get them to walk through at all?
Right, without stopping.
I went to the Disney Family Museum in San Francisco. I'm stopped in front of one exhibit for a half hour, examining it.
And that's why the Family Museum is a full, dare I say, almost 2-day experience, because we have to go at our own pace. If we were in these vignettes and tableaus, we would be stopping to look and picture and selfie and all these things at our own pace, even if you had that real guide with you, right? And then when you get to the idea of, well, we'll let people walk through and we'll have these animatronic, relatively simple animatronics, what you really are doing is just sort of walking by, a Macy's store window. You've got these little vignettes, but it really is sort of the I almost want to say the typical wax museum.
Display. As you're saying, it's really like an automated window display, which can be fascinating, but it's limited in its entertainment.
Right, and
again,
limited in the experience itself from a guest perspective too.
Mm-hmm. And Mark said once the decision was made to do audio animatronics, he said he had to go back because audio animatronics are expensive, especially in those days. So he had to cut back down on the number of figures. There's still over 100 figures, audio animatronic figures in the attraction. But for instance, in the walkthrough, Mark had like 30 pirates in the tavern tableau. So you had one pirate who's forcing a woman over a table trying to get a kiss. You have another set of half dozen pirates in the corner looking over a treasure map and with a knife, pointing at it. He says, once you had audio animatronic figures, I had to limit, how many I had. So I had to really simplify, the scenes and make them so effective, so strong there. And
he also had to make them fun too, right? I think he had to make the scenes fun. Look, it's like Jungle Cruise. If you would have made Jungle Cruise a depiction of what a real Jungle Cruise would look like, animal, predator and prey, you have to make it a little bit more whimsical. You have to so you can't use these real pirates. You can't use these real scenes in order to keep it Disney-fied and certainly keep it enjoyable too.
Now I'm thinking of audio animatronic animal poop in Jungle Cruise to make it more realistic. But yes, and in fact too, pirates are terrible people doing terrible things, and so you have to exaggerate them. You have to make them comical, and they're just a bunch of overage boys who are being rowdy. To take the edge off of that. So for instance, in the auctioneering scene, Walt was concerned, about that, and he even talked with Mark about that. He talked to Claude Coates about that. And so one of the things they did to alleviate that was they put up all these banners that say, "Buy a wench for a bride." And just by doing that simple thing, what happens is these are not pirates who are just taking these women for their own, foul deeds they're going to be doing. I'm trying to be sensitive for your listeners here.
It made what the pirates did seem less barbaric than it really was.
Yes. Here's a bunch of bachelors who can't find a girl.
Right. It was like a very early
pirates,
Tinder.
They're dirty. They're smelly. So they want to buy, they want to buy a girl.
They're just looking, Jim, they were just looking for love. That's all. They just wanted to find a good woman.
That's it. And so you stick them, you stick them with a bunch of pigs, 3 little pigs. You stick them with 3 little pigs. You stick a pirate with his foot hanging over the bridge there, and Mark Davis says that's the only time in my life that I saw that a dirty foot with hair sticking out of it would make people laugh. And, the interesting thing is, here's another secret, the voice of that pirate with his foot dangling over, that's ex Atencio. He's the voice of that pirate. We go through that and we don't pay attention to the voices because, the voices are just so wonderful, they just seem right. The voice of the auctioneer, Paul Frees, who was Boris Badenoff, the ghost host in the Haunted Mansion, the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Ludwig von Drake.
Ludwig von Drake, how could I have forgotten that? And he's several other pirates. Phil Ravenscroft, who's Tony the Tiger. He's the voice of, when you have those trio of minstrels there singing by the donkey, he's the minstrel with the accordion, and he's also the voice of the dog because he did dog howls and singing in Lady and the Tramp. And Thurl is also the one hanging on the lamppost, and at the end of the attraction,
and he's buff. He's buff. I mean, I don't mean buff as in he was worked out a lot. He was buff from country fairs.
Yes, and so and he's in the Tiki Room too, for crying out loud. Thurl's all over the place. But at the end of the original Disneyland attraction, you have the pirate on the explosive barrel, and he has a pistol that he's firing. That's also the voice of Thurl, and in fact, that particular pirate was named by the people who operated the attraction Thurl. And then when there was a rehab of the attraction, that pirate was moved over into the cantina scene, so he's now on that top of that barrel of wine where the bullets have gone through and shot, and the wine is spewing out through the barrel into people. And that was one of Mark Davis's original concept sketches. And they later, incorporated it into the attraction. I think a lot of people need to chill for a moment when changes get made to pirates and have to think, okay, now does this change plus things? Does it make it better? Because even when Walt was alive, he was constantly changing attractions. When he was alive on the Jungle Cruise, that's when they added in the elephant bathing pool. On the Toad ride, they got rid of the demons that were just, two-dimensional on flat pieces of plywood and changed them into three-dimensional figures. And nobody's going, wait a minute, that's a classic attraction from 1955. No, you can't do it. And I think, for instance, Tim Irvine, who was in charge of adding in the Jack Sparrow figures to Pirates, did an excellent job, because the Pirates that we all love, the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction we all love, still exists there. You can ignore Jack Sparrow, and still enjoy that ride. Or if you are only familiar with Pirates, and this is hard for me to believe, the first Pirates film was 2003, but now when people think of Pirates of the Caribbean, that's what they think of, is they think of Johnny Depp. So you've got a whole generation that's expecting to see Johnny Depp in there. I think she did a wonderful job of integrating the character so that it works with the entire attraction without destroying what was originally there.
Right, and everything that was the no pun, well, I guess pun intended, the bones of the attraction are still there. And when you add Johnny Depp, I loved it because it brought a renewed interest for a whole new generation of people that might not have gone on the attraction itself, right? So we're mentioning Johnny Depp, and we're mentioning Thurl, and we're mentioning Paul Frees, and you mentioned Ex Atencio. And when you mentioned him, this was another one that was on my list. I think Ex Atencio in this attraction is such a poignant example of Walt Disney. And what I mean by that is Walt being able to take people from his team out of their comfort zones and say, you are going to do this. And they say, I don't know what this is, or I wasn't trained for this. And he goes, no, you're a storyteller, and what you're going to do is tell stories. So when you pull Ex Atencio, who animated for 3 decades, right? He worked on Pinocchio and Dumbo and things like that. And you say, okay, X, now you're going to write the script. So the takeaway is he had never written, the person that wrote this Pirates of the Caribbean script never wrote a script before. And when Walt came to him, X, like, I think Walt thinks I'm somebody else. I don't think he's talking to the right guy. And Walt said to him, and this, Jim, we've heard the story over and over again from different people. Walt said to him, I know you can do this. And with that one sentence, he went from animator to writer, right? And so he also wrote the lyrics for the song. So he pulled something out of X and all these other artists that they had never done before, right? And then he goes on to write things for Adventures Through Inner Space, and he Haunted Mansion.
Well, he writes the script for Haunted Mansion. He writes the song lyrics for Haunted Mansion. He wrote the song lyrics for Pirates. He said,
"If you had wings."
I just put, he says, I just put together a couple of phrases, and I figured Walt was going to pull in the Sherman Brothers or somebody to finish that up. And he said, I had to write the lyrics in such a way that each verse was self-contained. So because you don't know where you would hear it in the attraction, so it had to be self-contained, short enough and self-contained, so that it could blend with the next verse that you heard and whatever. And I was so heartened when I talked with him, and he says, I don't know those verses. I have to have the words in front of me, people, to sing with that. And here's a special secret for just WDW radio people. We were talking about the voices. Here's something that you really don't see listed anywhere else. I know this person. I talked with her. She is celebrating her 100th birthday this year. Is the scene where they're dunking the magistrate, and everybody calls him the mayor. But if you look at the original script, if you look at the original publicity, he's called the magistrate, which is like a mayor, but it has different duties. And the wife is coming out and said, Carlos, don't be cheeking. That is the voice of June Foray. Yes, and you're shocked, aren't you? June Foray did a voice for a Disney attraction. She certainly did voices for Disney animated cartoons like Grandma Fa and Mulan, and Grammy Gummy and the Adventures of the Gummy Bears, and She was even the voice of Lucifer the cat in Cinderella. That was her first Disney voice thing. But she did that voice, and I said, it sounds Hispanic. She said, well, I can do a Hispanic voice, and she did it. Apparently, she had played a Hispanic telephone operator on an episode of Green Acres. And in those days, if you were an actor, that's it. Yeah, I can come in and do a 80-year-old Chinese detective. I can do a native. They had Italians playing Native Americans.
Well, you say yes, and then you say yes, and then you figure out how to do it. That's the smart thing to do. You never say no.
That's absolutely true. And one of the things that people miss in that scene where the pirates are chasing the women, there's a small turntable, and I'll bet some people may remember this. Others go, really? I never saw that. Where there's a rooster chasing a hen. Now there's actually a bigger story behind that, because Blaine Gibson not only sculpted the pirates, he sculpted all the animals. And he grew up on a farm. So he sculpted this chicken, and he got approval for it, but there was no budget to do any other sculpts. So all of the chickens had to be based on that chicken. And he said, the only thing that irritated me is I had to take one of those chickens and change it into a rooster.
All right, wait, I want to quickly go back to your voice for a second, because I will see your Carlos's wife at the window, and I will raise you. I will raise you the pirate with the hook at the well, and one of the ones in the jail. That was J. Pat O'Malley, who was Colonel Hathey in Jungle Book. She was Tweedledee. He was Tweedledee in Tweedledum, and the voice of Cyril in one of my favorites, The Adventure of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
And J. Pat O'Malley's most infamous credit was he was the one that Walt brought in to teach Dick Van Dyke how to do a Cockney accent. That is
so
the
you
truth.
Can thank or blame.
O'Malley is not Cockney. He didn't know how to do it. But again, go teach Dick Van Dyke how to do a Cockney accent. Yes, sir. Yes,
so,
sir.
And just quickly going back to X for a second, because I think one of the things that makes this, again, we're talking about this being the quintessential attraction, and why the music works so well with the scenes, is because I think he did what Mark Davis did, right? He took something that was very serious and made it very, very, look, he pulled a Sherman and made it simple and singable and memorable, and then he pulled a Mark Davis and made the lyrics very, very lighthearted, right? And so he was able to do it very easy because he made it something fun and funny that would make people want to remember. And then obviously when you bring, George Bruns and stuff into it, that's sort of the perfect combination.
Yeah. Well, and I love that one lyric he wrote, but we're loved by our mommies and dads, which again, softens up, these people who they're torturing, the head of the city to find the treasure. They're auctioning off women. They're stealing things. They're setting the place on fire. They're getting drunk. Oh, but they're just sort of big kids,
Right.
Boys will be boys.
Right, they take a very serious, very scary, very, something that was very, very serious and adult, and they add whimsy to it with just the way they're portrayed, both visually and in song.
And we all accepted it. We all went along. It was so seamless. It was so natural. And again, what the attraction captures too is not actual pirates, but the pirates that we remember from movies like Captain Blood and Treasure Island and those type. Those the pirates are.
Well, and they make look, like Johnny Depp made pirates lovable and attractive and fun and funny, as opposed to what they were in real life.
And Johnny Depp does his own voice in the attraction. I have a lot more respect for him because of that. Because a lot of times, you get sound alikes. So for like Woody from Toy Story toys, it's not Tom Hanks doing the voice. Sometimes it's Colin Hanks doing it. Eddie Murphy's brother does his voice. You know, for Mushu on some of these things that aren't worth their attention. So that's good. And as long as we're giving credit to people on the attraction, and I think we need to do that, because a lot of times people don't forget that there's real human beings behind all of this who suffered and struggled and, sometimes put things together with duct tape and paper clips and all that. I think one of the unsung heroes of Pirates is Mark's wife, Alice Davis. And, she always used to joke that she went from little children to dirty old men, because she had previously done the costumes for Small World, and now she's doing Pirates, and she's doing all this authentic stuff. And the very famous story, of course, is she's doing the costumes, and she goes to WED, which was Imagineering, and said, we probably should do a backup set of costumes, because, when you're making something, it's often easier to make, a second copy of it rather than come back months later or years later or whatever and try and duplicate that. And Dick Irvine, who was president of WED, said, no, we just don't have the money. You can't do that. And Alice just had a bad feeling about that. But then she realized that the bean counters had absolutely no idea how much yardage it takes to make a costume. So she just ordered double and made 2 costumes and put one away in a cabinet. And 3 weeks after the attraction opened in 1967, there was a fire in the attraction. Interestingly enough, it started in the Burning Town area. So thank heavens, the Anaheim Police Department had insisted
right.
that there be an off switch, because Yale Gracie's fire was so realistic. He said, we need to have an off switch so we know what's the real fire. So and Gracie's fire was just Mylar strips and a fan and lighting. My gosh, the guy was just a genius. The Wizard of WED, Wizard of WED. And so anyway, there was a fire, and the sprinklers went off. But some of the audio animatronic figures were damaged, and the costumes, of course, damaged. But some damage came from the sprinklers, because the costumes were not meant to be out there in the rain type thing. And so the attraction has only been open 2-3 weeks, and Irvine comes into her, and she only has 4 seamstresses. So it's her and 4 others. That's it. That was the intent. It took him about a year to make, those costumes. And he comes in and he goes, how long is it going to take to make new costumes for those pirates? Because, this is our most popular attraction. We want it down as little as possible. How much overtime is this going to take? And Alice said, well, let me think. And she walks over to the cabinet, opens it up, and she goes, well, maybe a half hour. and she says, Irvine didn't know whether to strangle her or to fall down and kiss her toes. But from that point on, it was then standard practice that for every attraction that had costuming, you do 3 sets. And so Alice just saved the day. You've met Alice, haven't you?
So I'm going to tell you, Jim, in the 12 year or the however many, 14 years or whatever, I've been doing this Disney thing. I have been so fortunate and so blessed to meet so many amazing people, people who've become friends, much like you, people whose work I look up to and admire, like Alice Davis. And if I look back, and it was all to end tomorrow, one of the most remarkable experiences I ever had was going to Alice. She invited me into her home, and I spent hours there walking and basically touring her home and sharing stories with her. The interview that I was able to do with her was one of those that I said, man, I don't care if nobody else listens, because I love just listening to this wonderful woman tell these stories. But I will tell you, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, it's episode number 193. In the 12 years I have been podcasting, I never have ever had to edit anybody for content except for sweet little Alice Davis. She tells a story, as only Alice Davis can, if you've ever heard her speak, about...
And doesn't pull punches.
She does not pull punches. The story is in there, and you'll hear how I had to creatively edit it, about the pre-opening of Pirates of the Caribbean and the aforementioned auctioneer.
No need to expose your superstructure.
It is one of my all-time favorite moments as I look back on a decade of WDW radio that I ever had to add. Again, that was episode number 193. You talk about characters, Jim. Alice Davis is one of those incredibly talented, wonderfully generous characters who more than earned her status as a Disney legend for so many reasons.
Well, and when Mark was alive, when you saw the two of them together, the thing that stuck out for me is she would always step over to the side or towards the back to be in that, so that the focus, the spotlight, was always on Mark.
She did that during the interview, and the interview was about her.
Yeah, and also I found that she was as protective as a mother lioness for Mark. The first time I met the two of them was at a Disneyland convention out here, because I had met Mark separately, but I had not met Alice. So the first time I met the two of them together was at a Disneyland convention out here in Florida, and the Disneyland managers, supervisors were having Mark sign, and the line was so long they wanted him to go on for another, hour, 2 hours, and Alice stepped in and said, "Mark will come back." And because she could see that he was tired out, the two just loved each other, and I'm sure she showed you at the house the letters and Valentine's cards and love letters that he illustrated and sent to her from all over the world.
And that's what I was going to say. Like, she talked so lovingly about him and their relationship. I was there to talk to her. I wanted the focus to be on her, and she wanted it to be on her husband. She put him front and center. And you're right, she toured me through her house where those Valentine cards, and when they were separated by distance, they weren't separated in terms of the way they look. They are a true love story. You can see how and why they served as part of the inspiration for the film Up, the beginning of the film Up, because the love that they shared, that she continues to share even after his passing, is incredibly remarkable and moving.
What a great story for Valentine's Day, right?
Absolutely.
And when Mark was alive, Mark would and I would interview him. He would say, "Oh no, you should talk to Alice. Alice tells this story much better." He loved her as well. One of the things Alice told me too, and I don't know whether this is in your podcast or not, is when Pirates opened, she and her four-person department would go in each morning to check the wigs and the costumes, which is not unusual because, again, sometimes costumes, especially with audio animatronics, will wear out from the inside, or there can be a spill of hydraulic fluid or whatever. But one of the things they did is they took in their own makeup kits, and they would put makeup on the human figures and then powder them so that it would look more realistic. Today, Disney just paints them. And with the redhead there, Alice said that people don't... here's a great story, too. I'll get to the redhead in a second, but I want to say this before I forget this. In that scene with the pirates chasing the women, Alice went down to the machine shop and had them come up with special wire bras for the women so that when they ran, their breasts would bounce up and down naturally. So they would look cute. Disney probably doesn't realize that. Okay, but on the redhead, she says, people don't realize, we make them look like they're real figures, but when you make the audio animatronic figure, it's a shell, and it's not necessarily a complete shell. So she said below the red-headed woman's bosom and her hips, it's just this 2-inch pipe going up through the center to keep her up straight and to, have the cords and all go up through that. She said, so I had to come up with a special corset that attached underneath her breasts and then to the top of her hips. So she's got that hourglass figure. She says it's all just illusion. It's all just illusion.
And that's exactly what storytelling is. There is a lot of figurative smoke and mirror. So, all right. So, Jim, listen, we could probably talk, knowing us, for 6 more hours about pirates. I want you to share with me.
We already talked 45 minutes before this podcast even began. So
I have a feeling there might be a second segment about this, but give me one more quick secret or story or that you want to share about the Pirates attraction.
Oh gosh, there's so many. Let's talk about Beacon Joe. Beacon Joe is a character who is out here on Florida on the rivers of America, and he's sitting out by his shack, and he's supposedly, watching the depth of the river and all of that. Well, Disney will reuse sculpts, and so that sculpt actually came from Pirates of the Caribbean in 2 places. First off, that sculpt is the guy on the rocking chair in the Blue Bayou rocking back and forth, and also the standing pirate in the cell who trying to tempt the dog. So the audio animatronic figures are very versatile. They play different parts, throughout that. And again, one of the things that I wish we had out here in Florida that is out there in California is that whole Blue Bayou, and I just love it. And the fact that it's always night, and it's what Dick Nunes called thematic dining. He used that term in '67 when it opened with the attraction, because it was ready to open earlier, and Walt said, but Pirates isn't ready. And he says that's part of the experience of the Blue Bayou, of seeing, those boats go by. And he says, so we're not going to give people part of an experience. We're going to wait. And so Walt never saw Blue Bayou open, never saw Pirates open, unfortunately. But thematic dining, where the food and the service and the atmosphere all tie together. And it was the very first restaurant that was in an attraction, and Walt was just so innovative. You go, holy cow, and Walt did see the model for Pirates. It was 40 feet long, and each of the figures could be moved. So as a director, he could come in, and he did. He'd move things around. And he even added, the very final scene added to that model was the auctioneer scene. And ironically, it was the only scene that Walt saw fully mocked up. He saw that a couple of months before his death at the WED warehouse in Glendale. They mocked up the entire auctioneer scene, and they put Walt on a dolly that had a chair on it, and they pushed him through several times at the same speed that the boat goes, which is roughly about 2 feet per second. And so Walt got to see, the whole thing, and there was a lot more dialogue going on. There were 2 pirates who couldn't afford to buy wenches, and so they were shaming some of the wenches that were up there. And when the auctioneer was talking about the buxom bride in blue, the billy goats would neigh, derogatorily, but Walt got to see that, and the reaction I heard from X and from Mark was, oh, he just loved it. He just absolutely loved it, and he was so excited that guests were going to just hit. And here we are 50 years later, still talking about it, still loving it, still being amazed by all of it. And yes, if the listeners want to hear more stories, you and I both have plenty more, but that's all the time we've got for now.
All right, so
it's all been a dream. It's been a Lou Mongello dream, and maybe if you hear it again, it'll loop again for you here.
All right, so my last one, because I'm a recovering attorney, is going to have like 4 in it. You talked about the Blue Bayou and the restaurant, and I love that dining experience there. At one point, the Disneyland version of Pirates was going to sort of have that Blue Bayou dinner theater, and as you were eating this Creole food, the pirates would be around, sort of performing around you, and then Walt said, no, I want the food to be the show and the atmosphere, and they sort of separated the two. But then you were talking about the characters and the models for the audio animatronics. So my last thing is I'm going to dispel a myth or an urban legend or a rumor. And I'm sure you've heard this too, that as you're in the final scene or before you get to the final scene and you see the pirates in the jail cell, legend has it that one of those pirates is based on Sid Caesar. Now, a lot of you are going, who is Sid Caesar?
I've never heard that.
You've never heard the Sid Caesar? All right, so first I think we have to explain, because we're a lot older.
We may have to explain who Sid Caesar is, yes.
So Sid Caesar wasn't just in Grease 2 for his, but he was an early sketch comic and stand-up comedian, and he worked
had a very popular TV show. A lot of people's
Sid
careers
Caesar Hour, yeah.
Started with Sid Caesar, Mel Brooks, Howie Morris, Carl Reiner, all of that. So among comedians, Sid Caesar was considered a premier comedian. And if you want to see him in action, it's a mad world. So you get a sense of who Sid Caesar was and why he was so popular.
Look, your show of shows, which was a weekly show, it was an hour. I mean, it was a weekly sketch comedy show. Like, it was monstrous in the 50s. I mean, It was as big as it got. But anyway,
and done live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so going back to your point, and something that you mentioned too, a lot of people see one of the pirates. It does sort of, he has a lot of the facial features that Sid Caesar has. But suppose, and this goes back to your story about Blaine Gibson, no one pirate is based on somebody specific. Yeah, maybe the auctioneer is inspired by a friend.
Maybe, yeah.
Right, he was inspired by him. Right, he is not...
is the right phrase.
Yeah.
So there's exaggerations. Yeah.
Right. But listen, there are so many more other secrets and so many other stories. I didn't even get to the Jets helmet in the queue, but I think I got to leave him with a little bit of a tease. But I think, Jim,
or the comparison with the Florida attraction, for crying out loud.
Exactly. We'll have to come back and do this again. But look, I think going back to how we started this segment 6 hours ago was, why is this a classic? Why is this a best of the best? And I think it's because it is an amalgamation. It is the combined effort and love of the best, right? It's Walt's vision. It's Mark Davis's characters. It was brought to life by Blaine and Wether Rogers, and the environments by Claude Coates and Exitensio with the storytelling. All of those things coming together and the exquisite attention to detail. I mean, that's why, John Hench said what he said. Everything is important, but the importance really is in the details, and they are abundant into here. And when you add some of the things that we talked about, you're not changing things. You're just adding more to the story and adding more into it. And I think that's why it continues to remain a much beloved classic, because they continue to put more and more into it while still leaving the bones, the skeleton, the heart of that attraction the way it was, when it was first envisioned back in the 60s.
Well, and that entire crew came from animation. So all of them put in all of those skills that they had making those classic animated features into this attraction. And with Walt's passing, because operations was pushing to get this open December 66 for the Christmas season, And Walt went to Roger Broggie, who was doing a lot of the mechanics on the auto animatronics, and he said, Roger, don't let them push you. If it's not ready, it's not ready. We're not going to open it until it's ready. And unfortunately, it meant that Walt didn't see it up in operation with the people. But his cast was the same people who had, made the greatest classic animated features of all time. All of that experience and skill put into this attraction. And I'm sure one of the things that made it very special was we're making this special for Walt. We see that Walt is struggling a little bit here. We're going to make this the best for Walt. It pushes so many emotional buttons. And, despite 50 years of all this great new technology we have, the back projection of faces for audio animatronic things, all of these holograms, stuff like that, the attraction still works.
Right.
The attraction still, and Marty Scolari, you brought up Marty earlier. Marty told me, he said the walkthrough, he said, Walt would have made the walkthrough work. It would have worked. But, my gosh, Walt always wanted it to be more than just work. It wanted to be something spectacular, something outstanding, something that people had never experienced before. And that's Pirates of the Caribbean.
And that is why it is a classic. And if you want more stories like this, I invite you to listen. Jim, the way I introduced you is very true. You are a friend. You are a raconteur. You are a great storyteller. If you want more stories, Jim has, I think, 14 books, the Vault of Walt series.
14 books, and the end of February, the 15th book comes out. It's called Gremlin Trouble, and it's the entire story of the unmade Disney animated feature from World War II that was going to be based on the very first book written by author Roald Dahl, called The Gremlins, about how the Gremlins were attacking and sabotaging RAF planes. The very first published novel by Roald Dahl, and he came out to Hollywood. He worked with Walt Disney, worked for 2 years. They invested over $50,000 on it during 1942-43, where $50,000 really meant something. And in 1997, I had the chance to do an extensive interview with Bill Justice, who was assigned to work with Roald Dahl to do the character designs and all that. So when you see those designs in the reprint of the book that's out there and all that came from Bill Justice. But Bill told me all these great behind-the-scenes stories, including how they couldn't find Roald Dahl one night because he was staying over at Ginger Rogers' house, and I also go through all the comic books that Walt Kelly had drawn of the Gremlins, Disney's different attempts to revive the Gremlins, like the Epic Mickey video game, the Warner Brothers Gremlins.
I'm saying you talk about Falling
cartoon.
Hair? Falling Hair?
And I even cover Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, the William Shatner Twilight Zone one, and I include the story that Rod Serling used to tell privately, where Richard Matheson was the writer, and they were going on a plane, and so Serling invested in having a full-size blow-up of the Gremlin and stuck it on the outside of the window where Matheson was going to sit. But remember, in those days, they were propeller planes. So as they were going to the seat and the plane was starting up, it blew the thing off the wing. So all of that money and all of that prep, gone. So everything you want to know about Gremlins, and especially a Disney unmade one, Gremlin Trouble, 14 books, and the 15th one is coming out, and you better pick them up, because as soon as I get a girlfriend or a life, I'm stopping writing books. So that's it.
So I will tell you quickly, my favorite Gremlin is not the Gremlin from it is not the Gremlin from Gremlins from 1984, my favorite Gremlin is Mel Blanc as the Gremlin from Falling Hair with Bugs Bunny.
Yes.
Back from the the mid 40s, somewhere around there. I'm going to link to where people can get all of your books. I'm going to leave you with a question, Jim, and it's the same question that I'm going to leave my friend, the listener, who I want to answer this on Facebook or on Twitter or in the comments over at WDW.com. What is your favorite scene in Pirates of the Caribbean?
Oh, the auctioneer scene. Absolutely. I love that. The Flaming Town scene is a little scary. It was actually a little scary for me. It was scary as a kid, and as an adult, even more so. It's like, there's fire. What are we going to do? And the chasing around the maids in the city, again, just seemed artificial to me because they're on turntables, so they're all moving at exactly the same space. Auctioneer scene, just so much going on, so much fun, and taking a look at the expressions, not just of the auctioneer, but everybody else in the scene. And up above you have the pirate with the leg and the parrot up there. Listen very closely as you go underneath the archway, because the parrot starts to sing "A Parrot's Life for Me."
My favorite scene is still Hurricane Harbor, where you see the skeleton pirate at the helm. When I was a little kid, Jim, I had the old Revel model. There was a model that you could buy of that scene. Yes. I was an awful model maker. I was horrible, but I remember spending hours and pouring my little, 9-year-old heart and soul into trying to make this as authentic.
And glue all over your fingers.
Glue everywhere. I had model glue everywhere. But it, for me, was like, it was my way to, create a little bit of Disney at home. That is what you help to bring to, is a little bit of Disney magic wherever people can go. We must, my friend, do this again. Thank you so much just for being you, buddy.
My pleasure. I always listen to WDW radio, and everybody should.
All right, now give me your best pirate impression.
Actually, we'll have the
We should have been ravaged and yellow. Pick up the arties, yo ho, yo ho, yo ho. Pirate's life for me. With sword and pilfer and ghost and sacrifice.
It's time for our Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week, where I invite you to test your knowledge of Walt Disney World history or see how well you pay attention to the details, not just in what you see, but sometimes in what you hear. If you think you know the answer, you can enter via our online form for a chance to win a Disney prize package. But before we get to this week's question, we're going to go back, review last week's, and select our winner. So last week, I had a simple where in the world could you hear this question, where I gave you a line from a current or former attraction or show and asked you to identify where in Walt Disney World you could find it. And your quote last week was, "A long time ago, I made me a rule. Let people do what they want." That was not, let me repeat, not meant to be a really, really bad impression of John Wayne at the Great Movie Ride, who told you to hightail it out of here and go right ahead if that's what you have in mind to do. But a long time ago, he made himself a rule. Let people do what they want, right before he warned you about some really rough territory that you were heading into, Pilgrim, and that he would think about turning back if I were you. Anyway, that was the answer I was looking for. John Wayne at the Great Movie Ride. If you called in the voicemail and gave me a really bad or good impression of John Wayne, you got extra credit. Not that it counted, because all the entries were randomly selected, and you were once again playing for the 102 Ways to Save Money for Not Walt Disney World book, all 7 of my virtual audio tours, the WDW Radio Magic Band cover, now for the Magic Band 2.0, WDW Radio stickers, and the hot and cold travel mug. And last week's John Wayne winner, randomly selected, is Sharon McClellan. So Sharon, you use the online form. I have all your contact and shipping information. I will get your prize package out to you right away. If you played last week and didn't win, that's okay, because here's your next chance to enter in this week's Walt Disney World Trivia Challenge. So it is Valentine's Day this week, and I am a hopeless romantic, so of course I have to ask a question about the holiday. But let's make this one a little tricky, why don't we? Because as you know, Walt Disney World is actually a great place to celebrate Valentine's Day, with a great romantic meal at the Boathouse, or Blue Zoo, or California Grill, and so many other romantic restaurants. And then you can take a carriage ride, or a boat ride, or watch fireworks on the beach. But I'm sure you also know that Valentine's Day is celebrated every single day in Walt Disney World in an attraction. But if you think that's the question, come on, that would be too easy. Clearly, it's Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress. But let's have some fun this week, and I'm going to ask you a 3-part question about Valentine's Day in Walt Disney World. So here we go. Question 1. At the beginning of the Valentine's Day scene in Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress, Father tells us that it's right around the turn of the century, but who does he say is getting ready to celebrate Valentine's Day? Part 2. Father's going to take Mother out for Valentine's Day dinner that night, but where's the daughter going? Question 3. Before he goes out for a romantic dinner with his wife, Father thinks he needs a drink. No, not because he's dreading spending the evening with his wife, but because he's thirsty. What's he in the mood for, and what is he going to get to drink before the Valentine's Day dinner? So there you go. Question 1, who does Father say is getting ready to celebrate Valentine's Day? 2, where is their daughter going for Valentine's Day? And 3, what is Father in the mood to go and get a drink of before his romantic dinner? You have until Sunday, February 19th at 11:59 p.m. to go to WDWradio.com, click on this week's podcast, and in the show notes, you will find our online contact form. And this week, you're going to play for, and you know what? I'm going to give you an extra prize. All the book, the audio tours, the Magic Band cover, stickers, the hot and cold travel mug, and I will also send you a WDW Radio t-shirt as well from our brand new shirt shop and logo store at wdwradio.com/t-shirts. So also be sure and include your shirt size. So good luck, happy Valentine's Day, and have fun. That's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you again so very much, and my appreciation and gratitude this week is more pronounced than ever because it is the 10-year anniversary of WDW Radio. The first episode went live back on February 11th, 2007. So this week has been amazing for me, and the love and the support and the messages and the photos and the emails and the tweets and the Facebook that so many of you have sent to me, either on my Facebook profile or to me personally or on the page, means more to me than you know. And I'm not going to, I promise myself, I promise I'm not going to cry. I promise myself I will keep this short, but I cannot tell you how grateful I am for the privilege that you give me by allowing me to share my passion for Disney with you through the show and through so many other ways. Since that very first long and painful 6.5-minute episode in February of 2007, I have always said that this show is for you and with you and by you in many cases. And I am incredibly, incredibly humbled and thankful to you and for you that you have allowed me to do this and share my passion for Disney with you. I'm going to talk more about it this week and the anniversary, and I really want you to please join me this Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern for WDW Radio Live. As you know, I do a live video show every week on Facebook. This week especially, it's going to be an all call-in show where you, if you like, can not just be part of the conversation in the chat, but I would love for you to call in, be heard on the air, be part of the show, share your favorite episodes or interviews or events or memories or stories with me and everybody else. And this week's live show, again, is really going to be by you as we sort of recap the past 10 years of WDW Radio. If you haven't already, please like the Facebook page at facebook.com/WDW Radio. Also, be sure and turn on notifications. I'll put a video, really short explainer video, in this week's show notes showing you exactly how to turn on notifications so when I do go live on Wednesday nights or randomly from the parks, you get notified on Facebook. Speaking of thanks, I also want to thank, it's now been about 2 years since I launched the WDW Radio Nation. I want to thank all the new and current, whether you've been a member for a week or for 2 years, the hundreds of you who are part of the Nation family, including some longtime members like Marnie, Darth Vader Turvis Ramondo, Sarah D. Leon, Clint Larson, Gary Ebels, Marla Chan over in California, Thomas Franklin, and my friend, who I am so incredibly grateful for your time and your sacrifice and your service, Mr. Corey Bassett. Thank you so much to all of you. And if you want to not only help the show, but get some of the exclusive monthly rewards like scavenger hunts, access to our private Facebook group, we do live group video calls once a month. There's logo gear, backpacks, shirts. I send out care packages every month from Walt Disney World and lots more. Please visit wdwradio.com/support. All right, so I know this is going long, so I will make it quick. Don't forget to please go visit the brand new 10th anniversary V10 edition of wdwradio.com. The site has been completely rebuilt from the ground up. It's easy to navigate, it's faster, there are more features, and there's more coming as well. Don't forget to sign up for our free email and soon to be completely revamped newsletter and download my free, brand new 102 things you need to do at Walt Disney World at least once book and checklist. You can also connect with me on Twitter. I am at Lou Mongello, and I'm also at Lou Mongello on Instagram and Pinterest. Of course, I would love to hear from you. If you have a question you want me to answer on the show, you can email me, lou@wdwradio.com. Call the voicemail. Be heard on the air at 407-900-9391. Better yet, I'd rather see you in person, shake your hand, give you a hug. So visit the events page over on Facebook, and please come and join us for the next meet of the month in Walt Disney World. It's going to be Sunday, February 26th. It is over Princess Marathon weekend from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the Food Truck Park, of course, because food, at Disney Springs. It's located between Bongos and Starbucks. It is after all the princess races that weekend, so hopefully you will be rested up and hungry and would love to get to you. Listen, come alone, bring the whole family. Anyone and everyone is welcome. It is, of course, free for everybody. And please RSVP if you can over on the Facebook page. Look for other events that are upcoming, including our cruises this summer, our cruise next year, some other events, D23 Expo as well. Please also go and check out the brand new LouMongello.com and see if maybe I can help you turn your passion into your profession with some personal mentoring or calls or group coaching. I want to help you turn what you love into what you do. And of course, and again, I'm going to try not to get weepy, this show could not happen without the time, talent, efforts of so many people. Thanks again to Becky from Mouse Fan Travel, who has been a partner and a sponsor, and more importantly, a friend for nearly the entire 10 years. Check them out over at mousefantravel.com. I recommend them because it's who I use, and more importantly, it's who I trust and who I love. Little Timmy Foster over at Celebrations Magazine. You have been here since the very beginning. Please check him out over at celebrationspress.com. And of course, this wouldn't happen without you. And all I ask is that if you like the show, please help spread the word, right? Tell some of your friends, invite them to be part of the community and family. Tweet out that you're listening. Share a link to your favorite episode on your Facebook profile or page or in your favorite Disney group. And if you can, take a second to just rate and review the show over on iTunes. Thanks to you, we have more than 1,200 five-star reviews. We hit number 2 overall among every podcast on iTunes last year. I want to thank some recent reviewers like Janelle K, who says, "Lose my walking partner. I've been a Disney fan who gets to visit every 5 years or so. The podcast keeps me from missing Disney too much with a weekly visit, and I'm going to continue listening as much as I can. Love the DSIs and the walkthroughs, and I listen as I walk and have managed to lose and keep off 20 pounds. Thank you so much for the Disney escape." Janelle, thank you for listening, and congratulations. But listen, I'm sure you feel good, which is more important than how you look. MJLG says, "Positively wonderful with a plethora of spectacular guests. There's no shortage of entertainment. Lou's not only a fantastic and fun host, thank you, but the positive energy is infectious and inspiring. That is what I want it to be." And Kay Cooper from the United States says, what a great podcast. About a year ago, I discovered Lou's podcast and have been listening to all of them in order from number 1. Yikes. I usually listen when I walk my dog. My wife and I are planning to move to Disney in August 2018 after our son graduates, and the podcast of getting me through the days. I cannot wait to get there. Lou's knowledge of Disney is phenomenal. Allows me to live in his shoes until I get there. I hope to someday say hello and shake his hand, because nothing beats a handshake and a hug. Kay Cooper, I promise you that handshake and a hug when you get down here and become neighbors. If you want to leave a rating or review and maybe not sure how, visit wdwradio.com/iTunes, and that will give you the exact instructions on how to do it. And finally, and most importantly, thank you. You have given me a much greater gift than just your time, than you probably know and understand, and maybe I am able to articulate. You have made this Disney fan's dream that he never thought that he had come true. And all I ask in return is that you do that to somebody else. You know, if you have the ability to help make somebody else's dreams come true, go do it. Because you've done that for me, and it means more than maybe I am able to convey in words. You have positively and profoundly impacted me and my life and my family and the people that I am now able to reach through the show, simply by virtue of you listening and the support and the love and the friendship that you have extended, because we are friends, whether we have met yet or not. And the fact that you're listening this far in really proves that to me. And for that, I am grateful beyond what I am able to find the words to say. So thank you. I hope that your dream, big or small, if you're dreaming about tacos, I hope that dream comes true and you have tacos. But if it's a bigger dream, I hope that comes true, or you start heading down the path for it this week. And I hope that you have the best week ever. I hope to see you on Wednesday nights or next week on the show or in Facebook. Thank you again. I love you. See ya.
Hello, Lou Mangello, and happy anniversary. 10 years. Oh, my gosh. It's Darlene Nagy from West Seneca, New York. And I am just so overjoyed for all of the years that I have gotten the chance to know you in person, in voice, in heart, with everything that has gone on every single adventure you have taken, me, my family, and our box family, our cruise family, our running team family, and I'm looking forward to the next 100 years. I am just so proud of you and everything you have accomplished, and the love and friendship that you have shared with me, my family, and all of the whole networking of people that we have now in our lives. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't know all of the friends that I have and the family members that they've become. And here's to another, like I said, many, many years and all the new adventures I can't wait to hear about and that I'll be able to participate in. So cheers, hooray, hurrah, from Darlene Nagy from West Seneca, New York.
Hello and good afternoon, Lou. It is Justin, box member and part of the Disney Springs team. I just wanted to say a happy 10th anniversary to your podcast and many more. And hopefully to get to see you real soon in the next couple of weeks here at our next meeting of the month as well. So I'll see you next couple of days. Keep doing what you do with the podcast for your 10th anniversary and many more. Have a nice weekend, Lou, and hope to see you again very soon. Goodbye, Lou.
Hello, Lou Mangello. This is Andrew Thompson from Quesnel, Canada, BC. I love your podcast. You are the greatest ever, and I probably kind of missed your podcast for being on the air and stuff. That's okay. at least you're good at what you do, and I'm hoping everything is going all right with you. I love your podcast, like I said, and I love it when you do the Becky voice. It's so funny, and I hope you can do a Disneyland California podcast of your best rides, foods, or whatever you want to do. I'm writing my own Disney book, too, of Disneyland, so keep up the good work, and talk to you later. Okay, bye.
You've got a friend in me. Yeah. Oh, shiver me soul. Me belly be feeling like a galleon with a load of treasure in her hold. Another swaller may well be sending me to Davy Jones. Well, maybe a bite or two more won't sink me ship. And me fine salty pork, matey. I be wanting for a fine pork loin. Maybe you can help me out a bit, eh? Oh, brush me barnacles. Now where be that little old fish dinner I've been a-craving? Hope that pilfering pussycat ain't beaten me to it. Avast there, mateys. If ye been hankering for a taste of this here bird's peg leg, I be willing to share, I be. Oh,